One season ends and another begins.
Yep.
Here we are. It's your boy G along with Alec. Another great episode of 6300. Appreciate you guys for tuning in yet again. Follow us online wherever you guys are watching. Subscribe to the show. I'm on YouTube and all across our podcast streaming services and all of that. Appreciate all the love you guys have been showing us. As we said, Dodger season's underway. We're happy for our guys getting started over there. Our boys in blue getting things rolling on that side. On the other side, the Lakers, their season is officially wrapped up. We talked right before. I think it was the final game last week, and we were discussing what could be for this team and what's ahead and their reaction to the season that has failed. But now with the officially over, we're now looking to the off season. We just had all the final the exit interviews and all that from the team, and heard a lot of great quotes and interesting quotes from a lot of guys, and definitely talk about that. So we'll start there, but we're also going to talk about all the NBA things across the league in regards to the playoffs and ranking those things. Excuse me. Also, we'll be finally revisiting our All NBA predictions as you guys discussed a few weeks ago, as well as regular season awards that are here as well. So a lot of good stuff ahead. But as I say, Alec, we're going to start with the Lakers, and what do you think now that the season is officially over?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about all our failures and kind of our analysis of how the season went. So
correct.
We can go to looking towards the future now. Well, I guess step back a little bit of the end of this current season. I did watch the exit interviews for LeBron and Russ in their totality. I didn't watch anyone else's. Mm-hmm. But I thought LeBron was pretty diplomatic in his analysis of the season.
Agreed.
There's probably more that he could have said about how he felt things went, but it seemed like he took the more diplomatic approach, and whereas Russ was more openly critical of how he was utilized, which I think is fair criticism from him.
Is it?
I do think so, because I feel that Frank Vogel at no point really tried to optimize Russ as a player. They kind of just tried to fit a square peg in a round hole with Russ, as opposed to letting him be the playmaker that he is, and slotting him into a role that plays more to his strengths as opposed to his weaknesses. They kind of just tried to make him a spot up shooter and a screener for LeBron for the most part.
You don't think he could have done some adjustment on his own as well, though?
I think his struggles basketball wise came from the fish out of water element that came with him coming to this team that already had some level of chemistry. It was a lot of new guys, but LeBron and AD already had their dynamic down. Mm-hmm. So I think that played into the mental, played into the confidence, I guess, issues, because Russ struggled finishing at the rim. His finishing numbers were way down from what they typically are. He's never been a great shooter, though. So pointing to him shooting off, that's been him for the past 13, 14 seasons. Yeah. So to expect him to now be a great spot up 3-point shooter is unfair. But he wasn't as good a finisher. It sometimes was lackadaisical, on the defensive end. You could say that about a lot of guys.
The whole team was.
Exactly. So I think Russ got the short end of the stick in this experiment, if you want to call it that. So I think it was fair for him to criticize how he was utilized, because they said we want to let Russ be Russ, but they never really did that, to be honest. And that's kind of what he said, in his interview.
What do you think of the quote about that he gave about giving he sent a wine bottle or whatever to Frank Vogel at the beginning of the season and tried to ingratiate himself, but never could really get on the same page? What do you think about his discussion of Vogel?
It was a little strange to hear that Vogel kind of was distant from the start, because I would think that you would want to welcome in this third star, and maybe that just points to him not feeling that was a player that he wanted on this roster for the type of scheme that he wanted to run. But I feel like could have made a better effort to forge those relationships. Yeah.
If he never thought it was gonna work to begin with, this never had a chance from the jump. So if Frank had that attitude, that definitely is eye opening. So we got the result that we did, at least partially because of that.
And I feel like there's no reason like for Russ to like lie about that stuff either. He talked about the lies that have been like perpetrated like in the media and the narratives that go on and the stories that are made up. Like he didn't go into detail about them, but just like off the top of my head, I remember people saying like he didn't work out with Phil Handy, and like you have like physical evidence of him like working out with Phil Handy.
Like day one.
Yeah. So like there was a whole lot of stuff. It was like it was doomed from the start because people wanted it to be doomed. I mean, they had the Vegas odds like on paper as a potential championship contender, but the media was like preying on the downfall. And it just seemed like it was doomed from the start. Yeah.
Agreed. So now we are where we are. For the moment, at least it seems Russ will be here because he has the extension, and he's most likely going to pick that up, and it's going to be hard to move him. So he's here. There's trade rumors, but just saying for right now, he's a lot more concrete in regards to being here than Frank Vogel, who's officially fired. Frank Vogel is out of the door, and that was confirmed right after we recorded last week, actually. So what do you think of him? And we kind of discussed already about him officially being let go.
Yeah, it kind of sucks just being like 2 years removed from having won a title with this team, or 2 seasons. I don't know if it's 2 full years yet.
Right, 2 seasons.
Yeah. From that standpoint, it kind of sucks. Like you would think you'd maybe get one more chance to run it back, like with the same nucleus of LeBron and AD, because you were able to win a championship with them at the heart of the team. But I just think that Frank did himself a disservice between not seeking to make it work with Russ, between the rotations that he did, the lineups that he put out there, not using the data that was in front of him that showed the young wing players like Stanley Johnson and Reeves were the guys that were in our more successful lineups. Like the things that were working, it seemed like he would go away from. And it just felt like he didn't maximize the limited roster that he had. He didn't maximize, and at times he hurt it more than he helped. So I understand after this failure of the season, maybe wanting a new voice in the locker room as well too. Like maybe these guys aren't as receptive to Frank as a coach anymore. Braun said that like he's appreciative of like the partnership that they've had and like the work that Frank puts in. I mean, because he's a hardworking dude. Like he studies the film, like he knows what he's talking about, especially defensively.
Right.
But it was a struggle throughout the season, and it was like once we did figure one thing out, a whole other part of the team also struggled. Like we finally figured out the offense post All-Star break, but the defense was like at all-time low.
Right.
So part of that's roster construction, but part of that was Frank, and I just think he did himself a disservice in the end, because typically you probably would get another shot after having won a title 2 seasons ago.
And while I saw the possibility of him staying, just seeing the lack of adjustments that were made, like we've all kind of pointed to, that move, the decision to let him go kind of had to be done. So tough thing. You talked about the possibility of his voice going numb in the locker room. Do you think that could trickle down to other coaches? Like I've seen them bring up the idea of like Phil Handy and other guys already on staff being upgraded to the head coach for next year. But do you think that there might already be some hangover from what Frank left over with those coaches as well?
Well, I will say that I know like the Lakers organization kind of handpicked the coaching staff for Frank. Like those aren't really like all his guys. And I think that was part of the issue why like Ty Lue didn't want to agree to sign.
Right.
Because they were like, we're going to have Jason Kidd like as your assistant. And he was like, I want to pick my coaching staff.
Plus, Ty Lue is and should be a head coach. So that shouldn't even be a thought to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I don't think that's going to be much of an issue as far as the other coaches that are there, because I think they are. I don't know all of them, but I mean, just Handy specifically, like I think he's elite at what he does as a developmental guy on the team. So I think they'll want to retain him. I don't know the other like assistants too well, but they'll probably clean it up a little bit and bring some new voices in. If you're bringing in a new head coach, which I think they should, like I think you should bring a completely new voice into the locker room. And the names that have been put out there, I think are decent ones, which we'll get to. I don't know if they're real like viable, like that we actually would be able to sign them, but they're good ones, and I think a new voice would be more beneficial than someone that's already been in this locker room. I think we need to change it up a bit.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go next. Who you like as the next head coach for our guys?
Well, we've heard the rumors of Mark Jackson, Nick Nurse, Quinn Snyder potentially, Doc Rivers potentially.
I don't like that. Take Doc off the list right now immediately. Like I don't want Doc as head coach.
I'm lowest on Doc Rivers. Mark Jackson, I have wanted him to get a shot again. It matters like what LeBron thinks when hiring the head coach, and I believe he's like kind of endorsed it. So, what?
It'll just be a full circle moment for NBA Twitter because with all due respect, was in reference to LeBron.
If he were to get signed, those memes would, I'm sure.
Yeah,
that day. Sure.
That would be crazy. But I do like Mark Jackson though. I think that'd be not hilarious. That would be a good fit there. And could see that possibility. Other coaches, I haven't heard many others besides so far Quinn Snyder and Doc. And I'm not too high on Doc, like I've already said.
Well.
Nick Nurse, I just don't think is real. I think the Raptors are in call onto him as much as they can. So that's out for me. But of the other semi-real possibilities, I guess it would be Quinn or Mark there. So we'll see what happens for us. Yeah,
or it could be someone completely different.
Any other names you could think of in that realm, or
who's available right now?
Just any names that are semi-available and could pop up.
I don't really know. I mean, I still I'm not saying I want him now, but I liked the idea of D'Antoni when the offense was just like complete trash.
I don't know if we want to try that again. But I will say we discussed it, I think, a few weeks ago about the Lakers trying to bring on Scott Brooks. Like, would you like them to go after Scott Brooks again and bring him as a head coach? And if we decide to keep Russ for next year?
That's the contingency. Like, if Russ is still there, yeah. If he's not, no. But, like, he knows how to maximize Russ. So
correct.
Yeah, like, for that pairing, yes. But I don't think that he's, like, an elite coach just, like, on its own.
Understood.
I think with LeBron and AD healthy, like, you may not need, like, the cream of the crop at head coach, but I think they could probably do a little bit better than Scott Brooks, and unless like Russ is still there, like unless you got him for that specific reason.
Right, I agree with you there. So we'll definitely see. You talked about so we'll see what happens with the head coaches, and excited for what's coming with them. You talked about how management made that decision and how management and put the staff together and all that kind of stuff. Of course, trying to carefully craft everything for LeBron and those guys. And LeBron had his voice heavily input into the decisions being made. And we kind of saw how everyone tried to have their input at first at the beginning of the season and say, oh, they're the masterminds of it all. And then when it all fell apart, it ended up becoming everybody pointing fingers. So asking you for our eyes, who do you think is most to blame for this Lakers season falling apart as it did?
Yeah, like we kind of talked about last week, I don't know if that it's fully like fair to blame any one individual. I think it was a failure on all fronts. I think because the roster construction, like that starts at the top, like you could maybe give the most blame to Rob Pelinka, and whether that be Genie or if Kurt Rambis is still like helping make decisions. We don't know all of that as Section 300 viewers, but Rob is like at least the figurehead as the general manager. So like we know we can pass some blame onto him for how he constructed the roster. But I mean, beyond that, injuries, Frank Vogel, like underperforming expectations in Russ. Yeah, it was a combination of a lot of things. So.
Yeah, it's always blame to go around. Immediately, if there was one person to blame or top of the list, I would go to the higher ups, the Genie, Rob Pelinka types, and just because they allowed so many other voices, it seemed to come into play, and all the other things that they that seem to factor into the decisions that are being made, rather than them just stepping back and maintain full control of the position they were in and saying, this is what I want, this is what needs to be done, and executing that rather than catering to certain people and players and whatever. So yeah, I looked at them first. I think it was thrown out. Somebody might have tweeted it out. We see with winning time right now that or back in the day, that even then it was hard for the buses to maintain the Lakers. And while they had it looked good from afar, there was a whole lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and keeping everything in house definitely was a struggle. What do you think of the buses maintaining ownership of the Lakers still, and trying to maintain this family organization? You think it's time to have a new voice up top there?
It's hard to say because I remember like the pandemonium around the Magic Johnson Pelinka front office days, and people were talking about the Lakers like they're bottom of the barrel and they were years away from a chip, and then within 2 years they won a chip.
Yeah, they found a way.
So you could say like Pelinka struggled, I guess, this offseason constructing the roster, but you could say it was an easy trade for AD. But regardless, like, got the trade done and brought AD here and won the chip. From the ownership standpoint of the buses, I mean, it's hard to say that like when they just won a chip in 2020 that they need to like move on. I think this offseason is going to be really, really crucial as far as how they're viewed by Lakers fans and just Laker Nation. Whether the front office oversteps or missteps again as far as being too like penny pinching with the money and not re-signing like crucial guys like they did with Caruso, letting him walk, and just like not being willing to spend to get a better roster. I think it's going to be crucial how this front office operates this offseason, just after one of, if not the most disappointing Lakers seasons in the franchise's history.
Yeah.
You have to come back like in a strong way. And because LeBron's championship window and just playing career is 2-3 years. So you got to maximize that.
Yeah. I agree with you there. I know I asked the question. It was more so from what I saw from other reactions online, but I agree with you that there shouldn't be a major overhaul because of how disappointing the season was. I think there is definitely opportunity to revive this squad greatly and get back on top. I think whether it's a year or two away, we still can bounce back greatly, and we'll be right back in peak form with a couple of the right moves going forward. So hopefully Genie and those guys up top can all get it all worked out in the best of ways. And yeah, again, still looking forward to what's to come with the Lakers there. So that's most of the Lakers. We went to the exit interviews, we looked at the staff, went all the way up top to Genie just now and all of that. Now back to the court. We've talked about trade scenarios and all of that for a few guys, Russ and others. There's becoming to be a growing amount of scenarios for AD. Looking at what could be for Anthony Davis and all kinds of options out there. Most notably, one that you sent me, there was one I think that Colin Cowherd may have brought up about AD for Clay and what's his name, and Wiseman. Yeah. So seeing options like that out there, what do you think of that one? And are there any other trade scenarios that have caught your attention?
Yeah, I haven't seen any other trade scenarios for AD other than that one that I sent you. I do like that one for both squads. I mean, obviously, like you have injury concerns with Wiseman, but then you also have injury concerns with AD.
Right.
But the Warriors just getting an elite center like that can also run the floor and can also be like top 5 when he's completely on.
Correct.
It would be scary if they were able to acquire him and have him next to Steph and Draymond. I mean, that defense would be elite with Draymond and then AD.
Yeah. And Kuminga. Yeah.
And then they have young guys coming up, and like Jordan Poole is coming into his own already. And like you said, Kuminga, and they have other pieces up and down that roster. So I think it would be a good move for the Warriors. It's just probably hard for Warriors fans to wrap their brain around losing one of Steph, Clay, or Draymond.
Right.
But I think if one of those 3 were to be moved, I think it's going to be Clay.
I mean, we've been saying that.
It may not be like this year or next year, but eventually they're going to have to break them up unless they all retire at the same time. So I think it will be Clay of those 3. Yeah.
I definitely hear that. We discussed it when they first brought up the scenario. And I hear you in that, especially seeing the rise and Jordan Poole looking like he could be a guy that could sink into an All-Star game sometime soon with the rise he with the effort he seemed to improve upon. So I definitely see that. But also just understanding what this team what was founded on in regards to Steph, Clay, and Draymond. I think you hold on to that core for as long as you can. I think it's just to a point where it's just out of respect, even where you just got to find ways to maintain them for as long as you can. And then once their time fully is done, then you let them go. But yeah, I don't think that is within the next year or two. I think they still have some legs left in them. Clay has came back and is looking good. I wouldn't say peak form, but he's getting back close to it. And looking forward to the playoff efforts that are coming up this postseason. Steph, when he gets healthy again, looked like he was MVP at the start of this season, so he definitely still rolling in. And Draymond very well could be Defensive Player of the Year this year. So or possibly Defensive Player of the Year this year. We'll discuss, but they all still have a lot of great game left in them. So I don't think that move is made just yet. While AD is a great talent, that could be enticing for them.
Yeah, I think it's a theoretically good trade. We didn't talk about the Lakers side, but I think getting a two-way player like Clay would be huge for them. Someone that you can typically put on the other team's best player. He may have a little bit slower step now, like coming back from the injury, but all things considered, I think he's still one of the better like two-way guys and an elite shooter, as we know.
Right.
And then Wiseman's more of a question mark. So it's, I guess, kind of buying low on Wiseman, with the anticipation that he can still break out. I mean, he's only had a couple games of college, and so he's essentially still like a high school player.
I mean, he played a little bit. He played early on.
That's what I'm saying. But if you look at it, he played like a handful of games, and then he didn't play the rest of the season.
I get you.
And he still got drafted high. So
very young still, though.
Still got a lot of room to grow, and he was the number 2 pick or something like that, or number 3. So yeah,
because he went over LaMelo.
Right. You're right. Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of a mistake potentially for the Warriors. That's another discussion.
No, but I hear y'all. Y'all keep saying that, but I see what they did there.
But yeah. So that trade in theory, I think, is a decent one. You kind of have a question mark then there at center. You probably need to bring in another center, but
for the Lakers side, it's just a thing where that still doesn't give me much confidence for the future. It's very much so another win now move. Clay definitely I think will last a little bit longer than the 2-year window than LeBron has potentially. But even still after that, I don't think he becomes the centerpiece for this team after that. I think we still have to go out and find somebody else to carry them on from there. And I don't think Wiseman is that easy. I think he's another good I almost said side piece, second or third option for the squad there. So I'm looking forward to see what stars we can find for the post LeBron era and all of that. And I'm just looking forward to it all. I haven't seen any other official scenarios out there. That was the only one that I've seen so far. But definitely interested to see how we handle this roster this offseason. So I'm excited for it.
I was gonna say I still like my idea of trying to make a deal with the Grizzlies, just because they got so many wing players over there that I think you'd be able to pull 1 or 2 from them, like for AD. But other than that, like I haven't really heard anybody throw out like actual trade scenarios for AD.
Right,
Just that
right.
the team should look into maybe trading him. So
Exactly.
we'll see.
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of folks throwing out ideas as we go on throughout the offseason, and we'll react to some if they seem legit enough. So, yeah, good stuff there.